been using shark fin shears for like 10 years now. So, I mean, they were my first pair of shears I got, and I think I'm up to about 8 pairs now. So we're gonna learn a mid-length cut today. It's a blunt but textured cut, kind of like the It Girl vibes that you guys get when you're all over Pinterest. So I like to section in 3 sections first, just off the sides and then to the back. And I like to start right down here to start our length that we're gonna wanna go for. So since this is blunt, we're not going to point cut per ends like I normally do. I don't know if you've seen any of my other classes, but we're gonna cut straight across. I'm gonna start over here. And if you can't see, just let me know, Willie.
Looks great.
So I know it's like an awkward angle. So we're just gonna kind of even out there, cut straight across. Even on both sides. Right. We're going to slowly go up towards the top of the ears, just bringing it down at natural fall and cutting straight across as well. And I'm a little OCD, so if you see me nip a little bit, that's kind of normal for me, just because if I see one tiny little hair that's slightly longer, it's going to really bother me the rest of the day. I'm going to tangle her a little bit so I'm not bending my wrist so much. And this should be our last section until we start adding some texture in. Okay, so now we got a good, pretty thick section here. This is kind of where it starts to get a little tricky. So I'm going to take my texturizer shears. I'm going to take this middle section. You kind of take it in thirds. All right, now with this middle section, you're going to kind of come all the way up. And then you're going to let your bottom section fit right. Can you see that, Willie? That might be a little too.
If you want to potentially turn her the other direction. So yeah, there you go. Keep going though. Okay. That way your body come across. Yes, come across the camera. There you go. Okay. Yep.
All right, so you're gonna let these natural pieces fall right here. That way you don't lose any length. And what you have left over on top, so you're gonna have about that much length left on top. you're going to take your texture shears and snip it all off. That way it's still a little bit of texture, but you still have that blunt piece underneath here.
What are you using, the 40 tooth texturizer?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I kind of want it more diffused than chunky, just so you don't get those. That way it kind of stays a little bit more blunt, I guess, rather than getting those choppy links in there. So again, I'm going to take this all the way up. Kind of make it where these little pieces want to fall down here so that you don't lose length. Cut all this off on top. I'll spin her for this one.
So the idea behind this the idea behind this cut is that you're blunt, but you don't have that real heavy line at the end, right?
Yes. And it kind of creates those slight internal layers so that you still get some movement in there. That way. So it kind of lays about there. So it's still kind of diffused, but you still have a nice blunt cut here. So next section, we're still going to take horizontal sections on our way up here. Again, we're going to take a blunt horizontal cut around the perimeter at natural fall.
This is a great angle for anyone watching too, who's always wondered why using a swivel would be better than using a non-swivel. You can see here how with the swivel, Montana is able to keep her wrist nice and straight, even when she's making that blunt cut.
All of my shears are swivels or super swivels. I think it's just because I've always used them that whenever I try to use another one, it really does hurt my wrist a lot. It's not used to bending like that.
How often is someone coming in where you are and asking for this haircut or a variation of this haircut?
Usually about once every other day. Usually kind of comes in with like lived in color requests. They also want this cut. All right. So right here gets a little tricky too. So right above that occipital bone, we are going to separate from that top of the ear section that we had. That way we don't cut into that texture we already put there. We don't want it to thin out too much. A little bit. This mannequin's hair is so slippery. Sliding out of my combs. Okay. So for this, we're going to kind of keep that internal layer going. We're going to section her in thirds again. And then we're going to take our 40-tooth texture shears again, and we're going to repeat the same process.
So you're sectioning from the occipital down and taking it out because you've already done this process, and essentially you don't want to go in and overdo it.
Yes. I still want to keep a little bit more like weight in there compared to a heavily textured cut.
Kind of seamless lived in layers instead of like true layering.
Yes. And with this top layer, we're going to bring horizontal sections again all the way down, but we're not going to texturize this layer. We want a blunt surface to lay on top of what we just did. That way the layers are more internal than on the surface, so you still get that blunt appearance. So that's kind of how the back lays. So it's still blunt, but you can even tell, especially when you wave it, it's going to have a lot of movement in there rather than laying just so heavy on the ends. And then I like to start my sides from here. I always start on the left side. I don't know about you guys, but kind of just my OCD kicking in again. And we're going to take horizontal sections again. We're going to go straight down here and blunt cut it again.
My mind always, when I'm watching education, my mind says, what other ways could you achieve this same look, right? And you, instead of using your texturizer, when you take those sections, you could deep point cut.
Oh yeah, you could.
You could use a razor, right? I mean, as the hair is a consistency and a texture that is okay for a razor. So there's like multiple ways you could do this, and you may already, some of you watching may already be doing it. You may just be doing it with a different technique.
So now that we're about the middle of our section from the top and bottom, I'm going to do the same for here. And I'm going to take two sections just because hers is a little bit wide here. Make sure I don't go past that. All the way up. And because the sides are always thinner than the back, I only do that one section of texture through there just to kind of make sure it matches all the way around. I'll do this side.
So we've had some new people join us, Montana. You want to walk us through what we're doing here, what you're trying to achieve, what the look is?
Okay, yeah. So we're doing a mid-length cut. It's mostly blunt, but it's got some internal texture in there to maintain movement. You see this cut a lot on Pinterest and Instagram, where they mostly wave it with that beach texture wave. So I take a lot of horizontal sections and blunt cut it. And through the back, I kind of section it in 3 sections, and the bottom 2, I take all the way up and texturize the top strands off after the bottom layers fall down so that you maintain the length. And on the sides, I kind of go in 2 sections and only texturize 1 section. That way it maintains about the same amount of weight as the back. Okay. Section her in 2 again. Lift it all the way up. Make sure I don't cut my guide and texture off those ends. So from here, just to blend those front pieces together and a little bit of texture to the front, but not too much. Let's see. I take a tiny triangle section here. We're just going to clean up those ends. This I do slightly point cut. Now I'm going to take a deeper triangle section split her down the middle here. I'm gonna find your guide here, just a little bit shorter. Okay, I have it on Do Not Disturb and they're still calling me. Did I cut out there?
Just a little. You're back. No worries.
Okay. I had it on Do Not Disturb and it still did it.
Okay.
I'm just gonna slightly take that section there. Same with this side. Slightly take that section there.
There's another great view with a swivel shear, how it saves the wrist and the elbow. Wrist is able to rotate with the shear. Elbow is able to stay in, for those of you who have ever wondered about a swivel shear.
You want to make sure both sides are even, of course, because you don't want an uneven haircut. Okay, so then again with right here, this is the one spot where on the surface I texturize, just because it is around the face. So again, we're going to go straight up here. But instead of taking it all the way off, because that's a lot of length, as I texturize, I slowly move up the hair. Just to add that little bit in there. From here, I pull the sections down and just blend the length a little bit. I need my other shears for that. Just make sure it's even all the way back. And just because blunt cuts do show mistakes the easiest, really take your time and clean up that perimeter. Then they're just gonna go home and they're gonna find a random long spot and be quite mad.
I feel like blunt cuts are the hardest cuts.
They are definitely the hardest cuts. And of course, so many of my clients want it. And a lot of my clients are Hispanic or Asian, so they have the thickest stranded hair. And it shows every little mistake on a blunt cut. So that's kind of how she lays there. And then the middle part's kind of the trendy thing right now. Surprisingly, most of my clients still part their hair on the side, but this lays good both ways, especially since you leave this top layer with minimal to no texture, except for that front area. So this mannequin really wants to part on the side. She's not having this side part going on. She kind of came to me that way. She really didn't like the middle part.
Erica gives you a fit out of the box.
Oh yeah. It's like her hair was really wanting to lay a certain way and she was not having it if I parted her a different way. But that kind of gives you the idea of how she can lay to the side. She got a really funky hairline though. She just doesn't know where she wants to lay. There we go. I think I found it.
That looks good.
Yeah, that's where she wanted to part. Had it on the wrong side.
So when you style this, how are you generally styling?
So I alternate using my flat iron and my soft waver. With the underneath, I like to use my flat irons to keep more length than the top. So I like to bevel it like you're waving it, where you slowly bend it to either side. And then I take my soft waver and I almost use it kind of like a flat iron. I can take a video of that and post it later. But I start to curl it and I slide it out kind of like a flat iron, and it kind of gives it a more loose curl.
Nice. Fantastic. So while